Jurassic World is back. 3 years ago, I said to myself that Jurassic World Dominion concludes the saga on a very sour note. Basically, I thought the studio had ran out of ideas. But eventually, we would find out that 3 years later, we would be getting Jurassic World Rebirth. So, did we really need another Jurassic World movie after Dominion? Well, yes, but actually no. But what about entertainment value? Actually quite decent. Better than its last 2 installments, but still not quite outstanding. From Gareth Edwards, director of Godzilla 2014 and Star Wars Rogue One, comes a new way to bring the original film series' spectacle back onto the big screen. The results are better, but they could maybe have done a bit more. So, does Jurassic World Rebirth bring life back to this bloated saga? Or is it a proper statement that franchises like this must finally go extinct? In today's movie review, I will be talking about Jurassic World Rebirth. It's time to see if life can still find a way in this dino blockbuster. First off, this entire movie felt like it was a much needed improvement over its predecessors, and thankfully it is. The main criticism this series had was its poor character development, terrible pacing, a lack of execution with its direction, and plot devices. This one tries to feel fresh and new by being a standalone experience while returning back to the classic series. While it still has the mentioned flaws, it at least isn't as big of an issue as it was, and the direction is better because Gareth Edwards is in the back of the camera set, trying to capture that similar magic with realism, visuals, and a classic style filled with decent enough scares. So Rebirth isn't say a reboot or anything. It honestly should have been, because people would have probably reacted more positively, but kind of its own thing, with mentions of previous film points, also mentioning Alan Grant of all things, and more of a follow-up to the classic trilogy. Even with a smaller cast than last entries, and despite some of it being wasted, the voice performances are pretty solid, whilst also sharing some dialogue being bare bones and very phoned in. Still, there's at least a few good actors that share some nice screen presence, like Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali getting himself ready for his role as Blade in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Jonathan Bailey, and Rupert Friend. The development is okay for the most part, and I did enjoy the chemistry between Zora and her team, but the chemistry with the Delgado family and Xavier I thought was really annoying. More on that in a bit. Also, at least the characters do take part in the climaxes / action scenes, unlike the previous films where the characters do nothing in the ongoing action. It's nice to see some spotlight for a change. And let's be honest, it does remind us on how special the OG cast was back then, potentially being better than the dinosaurs themselves. I think the best part of this movie is its action sequences, as well as its spectacle. It's the best part of this movie, but that could also be said for every other previous installment. No bugs to be seen here, my friends. Now, we got mutant dinosaurs, and some moments that even resemble those from its classic source material. It brings that sense of wonder / dread back from the old films. However, they did use CGI instead of animatronics here, and while I don't think it quite matches animatronics, they still look pretty decent. Now let's talk about the action pieces and scenery. There are two that I loved here. The first one is the Titanosaurus scene with Zora's team looking at their sheer beauty and size, along with John Williams's classic theme kicking in. The other one I loved was the Delgado family against the Tyrannosaurus Rex in the water. Not only does it pay homage to Jaws, but it takes amazing inspiration from that one Rex chase scene in the books. This is easily my favorite part in the film, and I'm glad it's just as intense and thrilling as ever. Connecting itself more in line with the classic trilogy instead of the reboot trilogy, Rebirth pays great tribute to the original films with plenty of recreated scenery like the mentioned Titanosaurus scene, spectacle, magical sense of wonder, and realism. It was like Gareth Edwards knew what he was doing to make a film that stands out from the rebooted trilogy. The music is also pretty epic, thanks to the effortless notes from Alexandre Desplat, the composer of Godzilla 2014, another film in which he collaborated with Gareth Edwards. You've got classic themes, music that also has some notes left from the World saga, and even some other tracks. Combine this with the direction, and you've got a film that can perfectly connect with those that grew up watching Jurassic Park back in 1993. If you want to create an original movie whilst paying tribute to its series, you need to have good in-command direction, as well as the thrills and chills. This is a great example. Finally, for a dinosaur movie that has plenty of action sequences, it even adds in a few themes and messages which are both explored wonderfully. Man versus nature, technology implications, redemption, selfishness, power and control, humanity as the real monsters, doing the right thing, and legacy. The mutant dinosaurs pretty much explain it all here. Actions have consequences. You got to respect the world and learn the dangers as well as disrespectfulness. Also, this is one of the few times that a film in the World reboot saga was able to make themes that can resonate with its viewers, unlike before where they were not good and were thrown completely at your face without any hint of explanation. So that's also somewhat of an accomplishment. Now, why isn't this movie as amazing as it could have been? Well, here are some negatives that hold it back from doing what it wants to do. The first one being that the dialogue is the worst part of the entire film. Aside from its leads, all of the secondary character development was overcrowded, extremely forgettable, and either the dialogue would be annoying, unfunny, or lacking a good sense of humor like the original film. These characters we were given are easily some of the worst of the franchise, as they also lack a good story or arc. The narrative should have been pieced together much better here, because its story goes all over the place. They could have focused on main characters doing stuff, and the family characters trying to survive in well-paced sidelines. They should have done something like the original and focus on the important stories and leave the side characters on the table. Many of its scenes therefore become pointless and rushed. Sadly, even for a Jurassic movie that tries recapturing that same sense of terror like in the old days, it ultimately fails to retell any of its horror, and it all instead comes off as cheesy or laughable. I mean, it is a PG-13 film, and I get what they were doing, but this severely hurts this movie as dinosaurs should be scary, not just slightly intimidating. The stakes aren't very good here. Remember in the original movies where when the characters die, they scream in complete horror, as well as the surrounding cast? Well, in this movie, one character gets eaten by a dinosaur and says literally nothing. No screaming or anything like that. They just sit there like, yeah, I had a good run, it was a good one. Okay, bye. There's no sense of danger or spectacle and does a poor job at making the set locations scarier. It worked in the original, but not here. There's no tension, no horror, just a dark void of nothing. Full stop. Lastly, my other criticism about this film, there's a genuine lack of potential here. Basically, in the World Saga, they introduce creatures known as hybrids. Remember the Indominus Rex in the 2015 Jurassic World film? Remember the Indoraptor in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom? They got some great spotlight and how they became who they are. In this film, they introduced something similar, those being mutant dinosaurs. So you'd think it'd be a huge part in this story. However, the Distortus Rex only appears a little at the end of the film, and the Mutodons just look stupid. It could be a good thing though. In Jurassic World Dominion, viewers heavily criticized it for focusing on creatures known as locusts for the majority of the film without much of dinosaurs. But if you have a big idea for a film, try and execute it well instead of forcing it in just to keep the story moving along. I do hope they explore it more in a possible sequel, but if the series really is done for good, then there's a good chance that we will most definitely not see the mutant dinosaurs ever again in this franchise. Jurassic World Rebirth is a pretty solid Jurassic movie, and is definitely a major step up compared to the last two movies, bringing that sense of magic back from the classic installments. I personally think that it could have been so much more, as it promised ever since it was in production. It should have been more than its hype suggested. Still, it's not all bad for this dubious installment. The dinosaur action spectacle is decent enough, the performances are very talented, the music is John Williams-like epic, and there are themes and messages that this series desperately needed. Although, not all dinosaurs are treated perfectly, as the dialogue was easily the worst part in the film, since it made the first act very slow-paced. The stakes didn't raise the horror elements as high, the narrative shifts to far too many story elements, and there are moments that feel rushed. More goods tower over the bads in this movie, but like an experiment gone wrong in a research facility, there are always consequences that can lead its proposed project into a disaster. As a standalone experience, it will for sure deliver the goods that this series has been known for in the past, but it still comes nowhere near that grand spectacle that Steven Spielberg brought 22 years ago. But let's be honest, that film is almost unmatched in its storytelling and impact with its groundbreaking visual effects. Jurassic World Rebirth is a solid, though flawed, Jurassic movie that's still biting off more than it can chew. Jurassic World Rebirth injects some of its most dependable DNA into its structure, thanks to the Roarsome efforts of Gareth Edwards' approach to the source material, making it a delicate stomp in the right direction for this historical saga. My final score for this dinosaur flick is a 7 out of 10, and a grade B. I'd say it ranks right in the middle for me. Better than its worst installments that came before and after it, but it still pales in comparison to the classic original. I would like to see this series continue in a future state. However, if this had been a reboot to the series instead, I would have been more satisfied. Having it be set in the same series' world building makes my reaction to its future somewhat dubious, and I just hope they don't screw it all up again next time. But with that being said, leave a like on this video if you guys did enjoy my review on Jurassic World Rebirth, and also remember to subscribe if you are new and hit that bell icon to see more content on my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all later. Take care of yourselves.